Hey everyone, welcome back to Subthesis. I am really excited about today's topic because it is one of the most asked questions I have been getting from you all lately. DeepSeek R1 is this free, open source, artificial intelligence model that came out of China in January 2025, and it has been making huge waves in the research community. The big question is, can you actually use it for serious academic work? Or is it just hype? That is exactly what we are going to break down today. Before we jump in, if you find this helpful, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. I put out content like this regularly to help researchers navigate the world of artificial intelligence tools. And do not forget to visit subthesis.com, where I have free research tools built specifically for academics. All right, let us get into it. So what exactly is DeepSeek R1? It was released on January 20th, 2025 by a Chinese artificial intelligence startup called DeepSeek, which is backed by the hedge fund High Flyer Capital Management. According to the official DeepSeek R1 technical paper, published on arXiv as paper number 2501.12948, the model contains 671 billion total parameters, but uses a mixture of experts architecture where only 37 billion parameters are activated per token during inference. This makes it far more efficient than a traditional dense model of the same size. DeepSeek also released distilled versions at 1.5 billion, 7 billion, 8 billion, 14 billion, 32 billion, and 70 billion parameters, based on Qwen and Llama model families. These smaller versions can run on consumer hardware, which is a game changer for researchers on a budget. Importantly, everything is released under the MIT license, meaning you can use it, modify it, and even commercialize it freely. The training reportedly cost around $5.6 million, a fraction of what competitors like OpenAI spent, according to reporting by VentureBeat and CNBC. Now let us talk about what DeepSeek R1 can actually do well. The DeepSeek R1 paper on arXiv, paper number 2501.12948, shows four standout capabilities. First, advanced reasoning. The model was trained using reinforcement learning, specifically a technique called Group Relative Policy Optimization, or GRPO, which allows it to develop chain-of-thought reasoning patterns. The paper describes how the model naturally learned self-verification and reflection behaviors during training, which is remarkable for an open-source model. Second, mathematical and scientific problem solving. The benchmarks from the paper show 97.3% accuracy on Math 579, 0.8% on AIME 2024, which are competitive with OpenAI's O1 model. Third, academic writing support. The model excels at structuring arguments, drafting literature reviews, and organizing complex research into coherent narratives. Fourth, cost effectiveness. According to reporting by VentureBeat from January 2025, DeepSeek R1's application programming interface costs roughly 27 times less per token than OpenAI's O1, making advanced reasoning accessible to researchers with limited budgets. Now let us do a head-to-head comparison between DeepSeek R1 and ChatGPT, because this is what most researchers want to know. In terms of reasoning depth, DeepSeek R1 uses transparent chain-of-thought reasoning, meaning you can actually see how it works through problems step by step. This was documented in the DeepSeek R1 paper on arXiv, paper number 2501.12948, which describes how the model naturally developed self-verification and reflection behaviors through reinforcement learning. For citation accuracy, this is a critical area for researchers. A study published on Science Direct comparing DeepSeek R1 against ChatGPT 4 and ChatGPT 4o in the context of musculoskeletal radiology found that DeepSeek R1 generated responses that, and I quote, may appear authentic but contain a higher amount of falsified and inaccurate information. However, a separate study published on ResearchGate examining citation accuracy across multiple chatbots in archaeology found that DeepSeek actually provided 85% correct citations, outperforming several competitors. So the citation accuracy varies significantly by domain, and you should always verify every reference regardless of which model you use. On cost, the DeepSeek Application Programming Interface costs approximately $0.55 per million input tokens and $2.19 per million output tokens, compared to OpenAI O1 at $15 per million input tokens and $60 per million output tokens, according to VentureBeat's January 2025 analysis. Now we need to talk about the limitations, because this is where academic integrity demands honesty. First, hallucinations. According to research published by Vectara on their hallucination evaluation model leaderboard, DeepSeek R1 has a hallucination rate of 14.3%, which is nearly 4 times higher than its predecessor, DeepSeek V3, at 3.9%. Vectara's analysis suggests this is because R1 tends to, quote, overhelp by adding information not present in the source text, even when that information is factually correct. This is a significant concern for academic work, where faithfulness to source material is critical. Second, data privacy. In January 2025, security researchers from the cloud security firm Wiz discovered a publicly accessible database belonging to DeepSeek that exposed over 1 million lines of log streams containing chat histories, application programming interface keys, and back-end details, all without any authentication required. Wiz published this finding on January 29, 2025, and DeepSeek secured the database after being notified. Additionally, DeepSeek's privacy policy states that user data is stored on servers in China. This prompted Italy to become the first country to ban DeepSeek, followed by restrictions from the United States Navy, NASA, and the United States Congress, as reported by Tom's Guide, CNBC, and TechCrunch in January and February 2025. Third, potential bias. DeepSeek operates under Chinese regulations, and multiple reports have noted content moderation on politically sensitive topics. Researchers working in politically sensitive fields should be aware of this limitation. Let me walk you through 6 practical use cases where DeepSeek R1 really shines for researchers. These are based on the model's demonstrated strengths as documented in the DeepSeek R1 paper on arXiv, paper number 2501.12948, and real-world testing. First, literature synthesis. You can feed it multiple papers and ask it to identify common themes, contradictions, and gaps. Its chain-of-thought reasoning makes it particularly effective at connecting ideas across sources. Second, methodology design. It can help you think through experimental designs, suggest statistical approaches, and identify potential confounds. The 97.3% accuracy on Math 500, as reported in the DeepSeek R1 paper, translates into genuine strength with quantitative methodology. Third, data analysis. It can write and debug analysis code in Python and R, interpret statistical output, and suggest additional analyses. The paper reports a code forces rating of 2029, placing it in the top 96.3 percentile of human programmers. Fourth, grant writing. It can help structure proposals, articulate significant statements, and draft specific aims. Fifth, peer review preparation. You can use it to critique your own drafts, identify logical weaknesses, and anticipate reviewer objections. Sixth, teaching material development. It excels at breaking down complex topics into accessible explanations, creating problem sets, and developing lecture notes. For all of these use cases, remember that DeepSeek R1 should be your research assistant, not your co-author. Always verify its output against primary sources. This slide is your practical cheat sheet for using DeepSeek R1 responsibly in academic work. Let me walk through the do's first. Do use it for brainstorming and drafting. The model's chain of thought reasoning, as described in the DeepSeek R1 paper on arXiv, paper number 2501.12948, makes it excellent at generating structured outlines and exploring multiple angles on a topic. Do verify every single citation it generates. As we discussed, research published on ScienceDirect shows citation accuracy varies significantly by domain, and a study on ResearchGate found that while DeepSeek provided 85% correct citations in some fields, it also generated partially correct or fabricated references in others. Do use it for code debugging and data analysis. Its strong performance on coding benchmarks, with a code forces rating of 2029 according to the DeepSeek R1 paper, makes it genuinely useful for research programming tasks. Do combine it with other tools. No single model excels at everything, so use DeepSeek R1 for its strengths and supplement with other tools where needed. Now, the do nots. Do not submit its output as your own original work. This violates academic integrity policies at virtually every institution. Do not trust it with sensitive or confidential research data, especially through the web interface. Remember, Wiz Research found in January 2025 that DeepSeek's database was exposed with no authentication, and the privacy policy states data is stored in China. Do not rely on it for politically sensitive analysis, given the documented content moderation under Chinese regulations. And do not skip the human review step. The 14.3% hallucination rate documented by the Vectara Hallucination Leaderboard means roughly 1 in 7 summaries may contain fabricated information. For researchers who are serious about data privacy, running DeepSeek R1 locally is a game changer, and the open source nature of the model makes this possible. According to the DeepSeek R1 paper on arXiv, paper number 2501.12948, the team released distilled versions at 1.5 billion, 7 billion, 8 billion, 14 billion, 32 billion, and 70 billion parameters based on the Qwen 2.5 and Llama 3 model families. These smaller models can be deployed on local hardware using tools like Ollama, LM Studio, or the Hugging Face Transformers library. The DeepSeek R1 GitHub repository provides all model weights and deployment instructions. For the cloud option, you can run the full 671 billion parameter model through cloud providers like Fireworks AI. According to Fireworks AI, the cost is approximately $8 per million tokens for both input and output. For local hardware, the 7 billion parameter distilled model runs comfortably on a modern laptop with 16 gigabytes of RAM. The 14 billion and 32 billion parameter models need a dedicated graphics processing unit with 16 to 24 gigabytes of video memory. The 70 billion parameter model typically requires multiple graphics processing units or a high-end workstation. These distilled models are not just smaller versions with reduced capability. The DeepSeek R1 paper shows that the 32 billion parameter distilled model achieves 94.3% on Math 500 and 72.6% on AIME 2024, which actually outperforms OpenAI's O1 Mini on several benchmarks. This is one of the strongest arguments for DeepSeek R1 in academic settings. You get competitive performance with complete data sovereignty. So is DeepSeek R1 good enough for academic work? My verdict is a qualified yes, with important caveats. Based on the evidence we have reviewed today, here is my recommendation. Use it for math, coding, and structured reasoning tasks where it truly excels. The benchmark data from the DeepSeek R1 paper on arXiv, paper number 2501.12948, showing 97.3% on Math 500 and 79.8% on AIME 2024, speaks for itself. These scores are competitive with or better than OpenAI's O1 model. Always verify its citations and factual claims against primary sources. The 14.3% hallucination rate documented by the Vectara Hallucination Leaderboard is not a minor issue. For academic work, even a single fabricated reference can undermine your credibility. Run it locally whenever possible to protect your research data. The distilled models, particularly the 32 billion parameter version, which scores 94.3% on Math 500 according to the DeepSeek GitHub repository, offer an excellent balance of performance and privacy. Never use it for final draft production without thorough human review. Treat it as a highly capable research assistant, not an autonomous author. The bottom line is this. DeepSeek R1 represents a genuine democratization of advanced artificial intelligence capabilities for researchers. A model that competes with $100 billion proprietary systems, released for free under the MIT license, running on your own hardware. That is unprecedented. But with great power comes great responsibility. Use it wisely, verify everything, and always maintain the intellectual rigor that defines good scholarship. Thank you all for watching. If this was helpful, please like, subscribe, and visit subthesis.com for more free research tools. I will see you in the next one. Sources cited in this presentation: DeepSeek AI et al., DeepSeek R1, Incentivizing Reasoning Capability in Large Language Models via Reinforcement Learning, arXiv 2501.12948, January 2025. Vectara, DeepSeek R1 hallucinates more than DeepSeek V3, Vectara blog, January 2025. Vectara Hallucination Leaderboard, GitHub, github.com/vectara/hallucination-leaderboard. Wiz Research. Wiz Research uncovers exposed DeepSeek database leak. Wiz blog, January 29, 2025. DeepSeek R1, GitHub repository, github.com/deepseek-AI/deepseek-R1. VentureBeat, open source DeepSeek R1 uses pure reinforcement learning to match OpenAI O1 at 95% less cost. January 2025. Science Direct. A comparison of performance of DeepSeek R1 model-generated responses against ChatGPT 4 and ChatGPT 4o, 2025. ResearchGate. Authenticity of references presented by DeepSeek, 2025. Tom's Guide. DeepSeek AI banned by NASA, U.S. Navy, and more over privacy concerns. February 2025.